Hello again. I'm going to show you how to use the formaway set of shortcodes to generate fileaway style tables in your Formidable Pro views. In order to use this, of course, you need to have Formidable Pro installed. Technically, you can use these formaway shortcodes anywhere, but if you want the content of your table to be dynamic based on your form entries, then you should probably have Formidable Pro. There's a tutorial for each of the formaway set of shortcodes here on your tutorials tab on your fileaway page. Go to formaway attributes and you'll see a table for each of the formaway shortcode set, and that will explain what all the different attributes do, but we're just going to run through it here as quickly as possible. So I've got a dummy form that I created, and I just have about 4 entries or so in this form. We're going to use that for our purposes, and we're going to come to the view that we created for this form. So test form, and we're going to do all entries, and then you'll notice on your visual screen you have a fileaway icon. So we're going to select formaway open, or form table open, to get started. Now, even though we're going to put the form table open shortcode up here in the before content, you want to insert it down here first. If you try to insert it up here, it's not going to insert, and you're going to lose all your work for building the shortcode. So you want to make sure that your cursor is in this field here, and then we'll just cut and paste it when we're done. So we're on form table open, and we're going to choose whether or not to paginate the table, and we will. And by default, it'll show 15 per page. So if there's less than 15 entries, it won't show pagination. If there's more, but we're going to set it to 3 because I have 4 entries, so we'll show you what pagination looks like. Now, by default, it's going to be a searchable table, which means there'll be a search field for them to look for specific content in the table. So we're going to keep that enabled. We don't have to do anything because that's the default. And by the way, you click on these little icons and you get all the information about each attribute, and it'll tell you what the default is and how to use it if it's confusing. We can add a search label if we want to, so we're going to have it say search data. Now fade-in is kind of, it's optional, of course. It's disabled by default, but sometimes, especially if you have a large amount of entries in your table, it's going to take a few moments for the CSS styles to load. And so if we set an opacity fade or a display fade, then by the time the table fades in, it's going to, the CSS is already going to be loaded, and there won't be any weird looking flashes before it loads. That's, of course, if you have your CSS and your fileaway settings set to load in the footer when necessary. If you have it loading in the header, you usually don't have that issue. Okay, now, so that's our basic config. We're going to go to columns. So the first thing we have to do, it's required, is specify the number of columns for your table. You can just have 1 column if you want. When you do that, you're going to get a bunch of additional options for that column. But if you do, we're going to do 5 columns, okay? So I entered in 5 and I added settings for each of the 5 columns. They're not all required. Now, sorting is ascending or descending or disabled. We can disable column sorting on the table if we want to. And ascending or descending doesn't mean that you can only do one or the other. It means on initial sort, on page load, it's going to be sorting ascending or descending. So we're going to go descending, and we're going for initial sort, we're going to do column 1. Okay? This drop-down, by the way, is dynamically generated based on the number you have in here. So if I reduce this to 4 and open up a drop-down, there's only going to be 4 there. Okay? Now, call 1 heading, we're going to say date. We can specify a class for that column heading cell if we want to. We don't need to, but we can specify a CSS class for it, so we can style it however we want, like setting a width or something like that, whatever we want to do. Call one type, alpha or numeric. The default is alpha, so you can leave it blank if you want it to. This is for sorting purposes. We're going to set it to numeric because this is our date. Okay. And call one sort. We can disable sorting for a specific column. By default it's enabled, so we'll just leave it blank. But if you have a column that's, say, just like a column of images from file uploads, then it doesn't really make sense to sort by those images, so you can disable sorting for that column. That doesn't mean that they won't be rearranged when you sort by other columns, it just means that you won't have the option to sort by that column. Column 2 heading, and we're just going to give it a generic, we're going to give the rest of them a generic thing. And this is going to be alpha by default. Column 3, we're going to disable sort for column 3 just to show you what that looks like. We can add classes if we want to, but we don't need to. Call 4, of course you can call them whatever you want. And call 5. Okay? And now we're going to set our styles for the table. So you have these two themes to choose from which are built in, minimalist or silver bullet. We're going to choose silver bullet. Now of course on your file away page, in your custom styles, you can create your own themes for your tables. You can just add the class names and the display names for those classes in a comma separated list here, in custom table classes, and the tutorials for that of course are on here, and it will even provide you by clicking on that, it'll provide you an example table that I just copied to my clipboard and pasted in there. So you can work from that. Okay? Now, back to it. We're going to choose silver bullet. We can add a heading to our table if we want to. So we're going to add my table. We can choose random heading color or a specific color, and of course you can add your own color classes. The same way you can add table classes. We can apply custom CSS classes to the containing div around the table, which you can then, through hierarchy, customize anything you want in the table. Now our width is going to default to 100%. If we put in 80 here, it's going to be 80% unless we specify pixels. We're just going to leave it at 100%. And align, it's going to default to none. This is really a float. So if you wanted to specify, if you wanted to make it like 60% and then float it to the right, then you can have text that comes up on the left of the table, wraps around it, that sort of thing. We're just going to do align none and leave it at 100%. And text align we can do left, right, or center, but default to center, we'll just leave it there. And that's it. So we've created our formaway open shortcode, and now what we want to do is we want to put this in the before content section. Okay? And now we have 5 columns to work with. Before we forget, let's just go ahead and close the table as well. So we're going to do form table close. Okay, and we can append a clear fix div to it if we want to. By default it won't. Insert shortcode. So we're going to take this formaway close. We're just doing it now so we don't forget later, and putting in the after content. So what this formaway open shortcode does is it creates the containing divs, it creates the table, it adds the table header and the table footer, and it opens the t-body. And then this closes the t-body and closes the table and the containing divs. Now in here is where we're going to put our rows and our cells. We're going to create a row. Normally you would just want to do 1 row per entry. You can do more than 1 row in a content section, so you can have more than 1 row per entry, but normally you would just want to do 1. And the only option here is CSS classes. We don't need to apply any CSS classes to our row. And so now we're going to put our content inside of these opening and closing formaway row tags. That's pretty much all they're there for. It's to create a table row. And so we're going to put the cells inside. So what we're going to do is add a form table cell. Okay, and now we have a sort value. Okay, so our date field, I don't know if you can see it, is 85. Now the sort value is if you want to display a value in the cell that's different from how you want to sort it. So we want to display our date in a pretty form, like, you know, Saturday, January 31st, 2000, whatever. But we want to sort it in chronological order, and that doesn't work if the value starts with Saturday. So what we're going to do is do our standard Formidable shortcode here. So it's 85 is the date field, and then we're going to do format equals year, month, day. Now you don't want to wrap this in double quotes, because that's going to mess up the double quotes from the shortcode. You can wrap it in single quotes if you need to have spaces in your formatting, but since there's no spaces, we don't need any quotes around it. Format Y, month, day. We can add a class to the cell if we wanted to, so we can add my date class, and then you define that however you want in your CSS. Now you can make it a call span greater than 1. By default, it's going to be 1 if you leave it blank. But know that if you do add a call span to your table cell, it's going to mess up the table's ability to sort by the values. So if you have a row that has a call span and you sort by that column, it's not going to sort properly. So basically, you only use call span if you disabled sorting for your table. Insert shortcode. Okay. And so now we've got a new opening and closing formaway cell tag. Alright, and this is for our date field. And so now what we're going to do is enter in the standard date, and that's going to be formatted in a pretty way, but it's going to sort by year, month, day. Just the numbers. And as you know, up here, we're sorting initially by date, descending, so it's going to be the most recent first, and then the call type we've set is numeric for call 1. Okay? Now we're going to I'm going to hit Shift Enter, and we're going to insert some more. And so now what we're going to do is form table cell, and we're not going to do anything special for any of these. We're just going to insert it, and I'm just going to copy and paste this 3 more times. Okay. And now I'm just going to insert the data. You can put whatever you want in these, of course, but I'm just doing a quick demonstration. Insert the data from my table, from my form fields into these cells. And so now we've got the form field data in between all of these, and then a closing form row. And we've closed our table, so now we're just going to hit update here, and I'm going to here's my page that has the display, so I'm going to view this page, and there we go, it faded in. We've got our heading, my table. We've got, as you can see, it's automatically sorted by date descending. You can see it's only got 1 arrow pointing up, whereas the rest have 2 arrows. You can see column 3 does not have any sorting capability. There's no arrows there because we disabled sort for this column. We have our search data label that we specified. And so now if I typed in 27, it would filter out everything that doesn't have 27 in it, and so we get this date here. Okay, if I delete that, everything will come back. We can sort by different columns, so on and so forth. And as you can see, we have pagination. I set the page size to 3 just to show you. So we have 1 on our second page there. Okay. Pagination will only show 5 page numbers at a time. You can skip to the end, go to the next, but it'll only show 5 at a time. And that's pretty much it. You can have your different styles. You can have minimalist or silver bullet. And that is how it works. I hope you've learned something.